we'll get started very shortly. Just high level, before I kick this off, this is a qualitative and quantitative study that we did. And I'll give you some background on the business and context of that study and why it has some teeth. At the very least, I think you just make some core takeaways that'll be useful for anyone's practice in their customer retention kind of efforts. So I'm excited to share the data. I also want to highlight up front before I get started, there's a lot more detail in, and you can download the report and study from the OneSignal website. So I encourage you to do that if you want to get more detail or you want to share this information more broadly within the organization with teams, colleagues. It's rare that you find a report based on 100+ billion notifications that or messages that we analyzed, and then we had the qualitative part was 800 individual companies or respondents who participated. So it's pretty in depth and really good insight, specifically as it relates to like tactical things you should be doing with your messaging. Broadly speaking, it gives you a good guidance, and I'll talk through this as we get into the content around what you should be thinking about in terms of channels and what channels are important and whatnot. So, okay, on that note, I think we're ready. So, state of mobile messaging in 2022. I'm Josh Wetzel, Chief Revenue Officer of OneSignal. To give you the background on OneSignal, so we're a customer engagement platform. Really largely scaled, delivering over 10 billion messages a day. We support over 1 million unique companies across the globe. Pretty equally distributed, there's not a high concentration in any one area, vertical, or region of the world. Approximately 8% of all mobile applications have the OneSignal SDK installed in them. That's actually trending to about 10-12% or more recent if you look in the past quarter. So really, really massive adoption overall, and all those figures are from third-party systems. So I give you that context because I think it provides the evidence of the value of the study and the data. So just specifically, if you didn't catch that up at the top, the data I'm presenting today is based on 100 billion messages that were analyzed over a little bit, an 8-day period in December of 2021, so in the last 6 months. And then we did the qualitative part was a survey we contracted and did in Q1 of this year. So really wide, expansive results, and I'm excited to talk to you about them today. So let me high level, how has messaging evolved? Well, before I get into the details, I just want to take the level set at this level is that, if you think about, and this is probably more so in some regions than others, but we've evolved now where everyone generally has a mobile device that has an app store on it, has apps. They may be using it for browsing as well. Some people still have PCs and they're using them for work, but we've now evolved where there's multiple messaging channels and sometimes multiple devices per consumer. And so that's ushered in kind of a new era, if you think. And what was not surprising to us, but I think ultimately the importance is a little bit, and this, by the way, these results are 800 unique companies. They're not only mobile specific companies. There's a wide broad of usage. OneSignal in particular supports a ton of companies with websites only. But overall, when you look at the importance and how people would rank those communication channels, push was overwhelmingly strong. And if you look at re-engagement, so just specifically that effort, push was overwhelmingly strong, much higher than email, which was actually surprising when we did this. We assumed email would be high, much higher, maybe not the highest, but it's interesting to see how strong mobile push was relative to these other channels. So as you can see, mobile push is becoming a dominant channel. When we asked them, what is going to be the leading channel in the future? Like, where are you investing? What's important? It even grew further. 55% felt that mobile push specifically was going to be where they wanted to invest and was going to be the most important channel going forward. And there, actually, surprisingly, we saw web push notifications even eclipse email, which was interesting. I think, and I'll talk about this more at length, but email is an important part. It's kind of the workhorse channel. Everyone should be doing email. But what these results are showing, and I think what we see in the data is you should be using multiple channels and you should be engaging consumers in whatever channel they care to engage you with. And ideally, you're building loyalty and touch points and you're getting permission from them in all of these channels. The more channels you get, the higher LTV, the greater loyalty you're getting. It's them self-identifying that they are a loyal customer, or they want more information from you. They want to be more engaged. So very important to be thoughtful about. Okay, which brings me to the value of a multi-channel approach. So look, I'll have some takeaways at the end of this, and I'll get to some of the specific empirical data facts we got from the quantitative study. But if there's one thing you take away from it, it's that multi-channel, and specifically tying 2 or more channels together, drives amazing uplift, significant improvement in results. So at a high level, we asked people, how important was a multi-channel communication strategy? 68% said very important or extremely important. So I just want to stress, that's a good number. I think it should be 100%, and I think it would be 100% if people had really good information and they were tracking to a business result their messaging activities. What we're seeing, and you'll see this in a couple of slides, lifetime value shoots up a couple 100% when you connect a consumer on multiple channels and you have them in a holistic journey. That even jumps even further when you get to 3 or 4. Now, it's self-fulfilling because, again, the more channels that a consumer opts into engage you in, the likelihood that they're a really strong user. But why would you not be taking advantage and leveraging those channels to make sure you could identify your most loyal consumers, or give people to opt into the channel that they prefer? Maybe someone prefers email, someone prefers push, someone prefers SMS. So it's really important you have multi-channel strategy. So as I mentioned, companies that use 2 or more channels achieve a 220% higher customer retention rate than those you only use 1. That's incredible. Like, I can't stress that enough. And if you look in the right, the importance here is you use multiple channels, and many of you may be using channels, but they're not connected, but you use them for different purposes. And this is the qualitative result when we ask them, what channels do you use? And then how do you think about using them? Like, is it transactional? Is it marketing? Is it both? I would stress that push notifications specifically, they're great for transactional. They're great for product engagement elements. They're real time. They're bringing you back into an experience. They're really, really important for that. On the marketing side, they're good, but you need to be very careful about how often you use them. You don't want to use them too frequently. You don't want them to like veer into the spammy side. Email, conversely, is not a great transactional channel, for the very simple fact that if you need someone to take an action, you need someone to remember it, you need to be someone front and center. Oftentimes email sits there. It's easy for them to not look at it. It's easy for that to fall into a spam folder or whatnot. But it's a really good marketing channel because it's something that's asynchronous. You can send them a message, they can go look at it. It could be a promo, whatever it may be. So be thoughtful about what channel you use for what purpose. And then SMS, I think, more is akin to a notification. It's just expensive. Every message there's a cost. So you want to use very high value messages. You kind of want to use it as a backup. If someone's not engaging from a push, or they're not engaging in email, it's a great way to drive a important action, so to speak. So anyhow, really good stuff here. Which brings me to in-app. Those of you who aren't familiar with in-app messages, it's an ability to provide a message in a flow in an application. It could be like a little partial, it could be half, it could be full screen. You can have it in landscape mode. Many providers offer this. At OneSignal specifically, we've got carousel mode, so you can go through multiple carousels to drive, say, onboarding of users. You can do it to prompt users who haven't given permission for push. You could prompt it to try to get opt-in for email, for SMS. You can do it for education of new flows or new sections, say, of a game, or a new service, say if it's a food delivery, a new restaurant that may be on the service, a promotion. There's really, really high value use cases. And tying this specifically to push and your other messaging drives significant lift. So just by itself is driving much higher engagement than notifications, as an example. Okay, I'm gonna pause there. So we're going actually into a really important point, which is earning permission. I think this is an area that we don't spend as much time thinking about, but it's also the point where it's an inflection point where you're asking somebody to take a step towards your business, right? Take a stand ultimately. And what we found, just point blank, you're gonna get a 50% improvement in your opt-in rate by using a pre-permission prompt. So what is this? You can see on the right, the visual here. It's giving them basically establishing this is the value prop of why you should opt in, right? This is the value prop of accepting notifications. Apps that do this well see big jumps, leaps forward. Apps that don't do this see lower, and it makes sense, right? You want to, as a consumer, you want to know, why should I do this? Oh, okay, that makes sense. I click it. Android, by the way, interestingly, has always had a pre, or in the last handful of years, has had an auto opted in and then easy to opt out mechanism. They're shifting. And so in the new operating system, they're going to go to a pre-prompt. In early testing, we've seen there's a nice jump on pre-permission prompt here as well. So really important, and to be thoughtful about asking permission and showing the value, giving the value to a consumer is important. Okay, now we're going to get into some of the quantitative components, and some of this stuff should be obvious. But what I want to stress is, start somewhere and work towards it. So first and foremost, personalizing the messages you sent will drive higher engagement, right? Almost 260% when you personalize in some way, shape, or form. Now, what I want to stress here is, don't think of this as an all or nothing. Like, it doesn't have to be, hey, first name, you've done this amazing thing, really appreciate it, come back and do this, right? It doesn't need to be hyper personalized, but you got to start somewhere. And I think that's where segmentation is a critical starting point. Just by using segments, you get 83% higher engagement rates. That's remarkable. And it's a really simple. You can do basic segmentation. For example, if instead of sending one message to everybody, have a message for onboarding that's only sent in the first day or two. They never receive that message, and/or customize it, segment it by, is it an iOS device, or is it an Android device, or is it something they did or didn't do when they started up and loaded the app? Did they not fill out a profile pic, or did they not add some kind of information that's necessary? Send those personalized messages, you're going to get that engagement. The other thing would just be, if you're trying to do a re-engagement message, send it to people that haven't been in the app in X number of days or hours or weeks, for example, versus sending to everybody, right? This is sometimes obvious stuff, but what we see, a lot of people just send general messages to everybody every time they send. And those are not great experience for the people that are super loyal to get a re-engagement message when you're already heavily engaged, or conversely get a message about some intricate kind of complex part of the app experience or product, and you're somebody who hasn't been at the app in months. So I can't stress this enough. Using segments is crucial. Next, templates. So what are templates? Templates are basically forms that you can use to create a journey or a specific type of message. Using consistent templates drives improvement. It's not astronomical, but just these are simple things that you can do actually today. You can start using simple templates and consistently using those templates. If you use the OneSignal template, so we provide templates for onboarding or re-engagement, cart abandonment, things of that nature. Using those templates, we see a 31% higher engagement rate. So I think what that's saying is that we've built templates that we know perform well, and if you use those, they're going to perform better than not using a template. I think if you've got your own brand guideline, you've got your own flow, great. That's probably going to perform way better than 31%. The point here is be consistent with your messaging. Leverage templates if you don't have them, build those templates, or at the very least, default to the OneSignal templates. Okay, this is the one that's obvious, but I think we always forget. Sometimes it's hard, right? You got to go find an image. We are a visual society. Think about the social experiences that are taking off in the digital world. They're all visual in nature, right? The text-based thing, still there. We still use things like Twitter, but the other things that are growing fast are visual. They're visual in nature, so you need to use an image whenever possible. You can see, I won't go through the specifics by category. We used, just for this purpose, we used the Google Play Store app categorization, and then looked at the average click-through rate increase versus images versus non-images. So very broad. I can tell you there's millions, if not billions of messages that are behind each one of these categories. Some of them are really large categories, some are less. But you can see imagery drives a discernible improvement in click-through rate and ideally in engagement, right? Especially if you're trying to drive that result. So images are crucial. I don't care if it's a notification, an email, use an image. Oh, jump to there. Okay, growth hacking. So this is sort of a broad category. I would say this is, all sorts of different things, and a lot of platforms provide this. So this isn't just OneSignal specific. But when there's opportunities and you're trying to drive a message to get the best possible result, think about, in the case of OneSignal, we offer this feature that's called intelligent delivery. It will send a message in a 24-hour period to each user that's most likely to engage with that message. So because we have so many interactions with consumers, we have a good understanding of when they're using their phone, when best to deliver this message. So if you're trying to send a time-sensitive breaking news or take this action right now, send that immediately. That's a transactional message. But if you're trying to send a message about a promotion, you're trying to deliver a message that gets the highest kind of view through and engagement, things like this deliver a better result. So definitely take advantage of those types of features on OneSignal or other platforms. A/B testing. So this actually surprised me. I've seen studies and looked at this in the past. A/B testing is all over Silicon Valley. It's a sort of a data-driven mentality. But 15% solid, and I think it's important, particularly as you think about, like, I'm building templates, what template's going to work better. I'm building a journey for onboarding for these like crucial moments in my customer's journey, those inflection points where if they take this action or they complete the third order or the fifth order, I know that I've converted them and they're going to be loyal. Test those messages along that journey, and then get to the right motion, and then roll out that journey to everybody to hit those cycles and those critical moments in your product experience. So A/B testing, 15%. Localization, this should be a no-brainer. I know it's hard in some cases, but if you've got an active audience that is coming to you and their primary language is not the language you're using, so in this case, the example here, English and Spanish, you will see a discernible jump in engagement and success with those messaging. And I think it makes sense, right? If someone sends me a message in, say, German, I'm not going to be able to engage with it. Say, unfortunately, I don't speak German. So if you've got a large segment of your audience that speaks primarily Mandarin or German or Spanish, whatever it may be, Italian, it's worth customizing that experience to those devices. So. Okay, measuring success. So this is, I think important for us all to be thoughtful about. This is a pet peeve of mine, though, so I'll go on a little bit of a tangent. Number one thing was click-through rate. So I think click-through rate, great. 15, 20 years ago, this was an easy way to measure success. All of the industry kind of pushes towards that. Google, the largest digital ad platform, we're spending a ton of money there to drive people, acquire users. What's their pricing model? What's the economic model? It's cost per click, right? So it's click-through rate is how we all think about things. But I want to stress to you, and again, this is another takeaway, to get to the core essence of what you're trying to do, always think about what's your goal as a business. Are you trying to drive an in-app purchase? Are you trying to drive a subscription? Are you trying to drive impressions because your business is ad supported? Whatever that may be, think about it in terms of how do I construct this messaging sequence, my customer journey in such a way to drive my ultimate business outcome. Because I think click-through rate it's a proxy for like part of the process, but it's not really indicative of did I have success with what I'm doing here long term from a life cycle standpoint. So anyhow, that's my soapbox. If you're just looking for click-through rate gains, you can see them. That's again the 100+ million, 100 billion messages that we analyze, and you can see by using segments, you're going to get a 21%. So segmenting your message, you're going to get a 21% click-through rate gain. Personalization as a broad category, you're going to get 58%. A/B testing, 8%. Images, 60%. Just to like stress that, images, just by using images on a regular basis. We didn't have it up here, but emojis will drive an increased click-through rate as well. So really important. And then last, and then I'll get into the takeaways, and we'll get into some Q&A. So by the way, that's a heads up. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to add them, and I will address them when I'm done here. But lastly, a majority of respondents said they were very confident messaging campaigns are having a positive impact on goals. I'm biased, obviously, but I've been in and around the marketing technology, kind of consumer internet space, mobile apps for 20 plus years. I can tell you without a doubt that 100% of the time you're doing messaging is a positive impact on the company. And the reason why is because in a digital world, out of sight, out of mind, people forget about the product, they forget about the service, right? So if you're not sending them emails, you're not sending them notifications, you're not engaging them, it's not going to be a positive result in the end. So you need to be having some ongoing relationship. You need to be respectful. You need to always be adding value in those messages. You need to accentuate the product or service, but they are 100% having positive. But I think this comes back to the fact that 35% or 36% of people were saying that they measure success just on click-through rate. Well, if you're measuring success on click-through rate, you're probably not going to necessarily know definitively that the campaigns are having a positive impact. So think about using OneSignal's integrated in tools like Mixpanel and Amplitude and Google Analytics and Adobe. Put your events, like your actual business outcomes in there, or use OneSignal as a product called Outcomes, which is an event tracking thing. You could put that for a closed purchase. You can put that in for in-app purchase. You can be tracking these events to see what messages are having a positive or more positive impact and which ones are having less. Do more of what's having success. Because I would like to see this be 100%. People should have confidence that it's working. And if it's not working, they need to be iterating to get it to be working. So anyhow, enough said there. So key takeaways, real quick. Multi-channel, I can't stress that enough. It kind of goes in with my point 2, which is really important. You should be using multiple channels together. You should be starting to aggregate or construct and build customer journeys for onboarding, for those critical moments in the experience they have with a consumer. So that's 1 and 2. Third, personalization. At the very least, use segmentation. Don't think about it as like, I have to do all this like personalized experience. Like start small and build from there. So use basic segments around super loyal users, send them types of message versus less loyal users. Think about things that may be able to differentiate the user experience, whether it's device type. In some cases, we can prompt. You can use in-app messaging or some of the prompting that OneSignal provides to ask them very specific, like, do they want to see more of this or do they want less of that? Those actually create data tags in our system to allow you to personalize the experience even further. So there's lots of things you can do from a personalization perspective that's not really hard, and it's very low code, not necessarily doesn't require engineering work. And then last, optimize. So use templates, A/B test, specifically bigger messages or things that are going to be in automated journeys going forward. Build these things to drive those crucial touch points through the customer journey. So, okay, that's that. Appreciate you listening. I'm going to get into some questions now. So I really appreciate you guys joining, and I'll get through this. Okay, let's see. There's some questions, lots of questions. So I appreciate that. Let's see. Okay, how has the pandemic affected the various customer messaging channels? That's an interesting question. So the pandemic has transformed mobile customer experiences into a top priority for many companies. I think, look, I talked about this up front. People are spending a lot more time in mobile channels than ever, right? There's certain regions of the world where mobile is their connection point to the internet, to friends, family. I call my phone my life's remote control, right? Like I literally control my lights on it. I'm controlling my TV, music. I wish I could control my kids, but I can't. Anyhow, I just think ultimately users are spending, basically 30+% of their time, or 30% more of their time per day on mobile apps in 2001, and that's only growing. So we're going to a world where center of entertainment, particularly if the young generation is in a mobile device, you have to be thoughtful about that. Let's see what else here. There's a ton of questions. What are some ways to leverage first-party data? So that's a good question, and the answer kind of varies greatly depending on what your product and service is and how you integrate. Like, are you doing event tracking? Are you doing things in the experience? Have you connected a third-party analytics provider? But so I think once you've figured out what's your business outcome, and you're starting to build and architect ways to get personal or individual data, user data, into either an analytics tool that you can push into OneSignal or actually directly into OneSignal. You can do a ton of things around personalizing that experience, building those journeys. You can leverage that data. By the way, you can export it, and you can do retargeting and other solutions. There's a ton of things that that you can do around that. But I think the core is just basic segmentation, A/B test, differentiate the context, understand what users are trying to get at, and leverage the real-time nature of the messaging. How do I know which messaging best practice are best for my business? Okay, yeah, so how do I know which messaging best practice are right for my business? It's a great question. I would say it's a trial and error. But I would also add, and you can see this in the data, if you can download the report, again, at onesignal.com, you get the state of messaging and sort of the more detailed look into that, the study. But I would consider, I think that, look, you should use push for real-time messaging. You want to be very careful about overusing it because it's critical. It's front and center on the phone. It's, you don't want to abuse that. And then use email for more long-form asynchronous pieces. Okay, let's see. Couple questions here. Let me make sure I'm getting through. Okay, another question. How does customer engagement tracking get impacted when using ad blocker? Can you talk about what tracking data is collected to assess success in terms of engagement? So it's a good question, and there's probably some technical nuances that I'm not the best equipped to answer. But I will say one of the things that's happening is there's a shift happening, and companies I'm talking to, Fortune 500 companies in particular, where they have really large marketing teams and they're really invested here. There's a shift from, hey, acquisition is important, and we need to continue to acquire new users. We need to continue to build awareness in the market for our product, but we also need to stop kind of putting retention and the loyalty part of our marketing efforts on the back burner and put them kind of over here. And they're recognizing that we need to shift that. And part of that's things like retargeting and ad blockers are making it more difficult to laser focus and personalize the ads. And also just the reality that there's been less investment in the retention side of the business. And so if you just think about it, OneSignal to address the data, you're going to get basic things from the SDK like device type, frequency, all sorts of things around, primary language. Like I said, you can localize the experience knowing that the device is specifically in Spanish or in Mandarin or English, whatever it may be. And those are small pieces, but like in aggregate, you can really start personalizing the experience in such a way. And then you can add to that by putting in event tracking, any first-party data. Basically, ultimately, you can access as an app or a website. If you think about what's happening, the world is such where a consumer opts in and you have the ability to leverage that data for your business. And so you can upload that into OneSignal, or OneSignal can help generate that and store it for you and then ultimately take action against it. Okay, we're actually almost at time. I will take one more question. Question from audience: what is the best way to figure out an ideal frequency for marketing note re-engagement messages so it doesn't backfire? That's a great question, and I would go back to what I talked about earlier. It's critical to think about, map out your customer journey, map out what are the areas, like what are those crucial moments in that journey where consumers take actions or don't take actions that make the difference between them becoming successful, and then build your marketing either outbound, so things like actually paid marketing, things of that nature, and messaging to architect and push towards and through those crucial moments. So I would say frequency is really dependent on what the moment is and what you're actually conveying. So if it's e-com and it's somebody who's someone's just like abandoned a cart, sending them a message about, hey, left this, you want to learn more about it, or here's a promotion for it. Like I don't think that's too much. But if it's something where they just left an experience and they're jumping out, ultimately you want to be careful about sending too many messages because then it's overkill. And then I would say the frequency thing too is about channel. That's why when you connect multiple channels, if they're not engaging with email, you can try push. If they're not engaging in push, you can then revert to SMS, right? You can figure out what your cascading waterfall is, but you can continue to have that conversation, and it's architected in such a way where somebody's there or not, and when they are or aren't engaging. But I think that's why it's so important, and the world's moving towards this holistic multi-channel approach. So Thank you all for joining. I really appreciate the time today. I know you've got plenty of things to do in your day. It's a beautiful Wednesday. So I thank you and appreciate that you joined and spent time with us today. If you have any further questions or you ever want to reach out, you can reach out to OneSignal at support@onesignal.com. You can reach me personally at jwetzel@onesignal.com, or you can tweet me or DM me at jwetzel or LinkedIn. So thank you very much. Have an awesome Wednesday. Take care. Bye-bye.